All right, today we're gathering with Dana, aka the Bravo Investigator, host of the Bravo Investigator podcast. She runs a really amazing, comprehensive Instagram account of the same name. I've been on Dana's podcast before, and I've been meaning to have her on, and she's a true expert on the Valley. And as we all know, there's been a lot going on for this season two of the Valley. And so this felt like the perfect time to finally have Dana on the show. So, Dana, it's been a lot. Thank you for being here to help me break it down. How are you?
I'm good, Gibson. I'm so happy to be gabbing with you today. Been a longtime fan of your show, longtime fan of your content as well, and pretty much all your opinions. You're sort of like the king of pop culture commentary out there, is what I'd say. So
Wow.
I've just really always enjoyed your takes, and I'm just so excited to chat with you today.
That is so nice of you. That's very kind. So you're wearing a Kristen and Luke shirt, which I love. Like, show the
Thank you.
people. For people listening, she's wearing their engaged T-shirt that they gave out to people on the Hawaii trip. That's a collector's item.
I think Kristen, I think when she had posted like pictures from that night, I think then she had posted on Instagram, like in her stories, like, should we be selling this shirt on James May? And I think a lot of people were like, yeah. So I ended up having to pay so much in shipping fees because I'm in Canada. So it ended up being like an extra $40 in shipping fees. So the
Crazy.
whole thing was like $70, but like it's worth it to feel like I was part of the experience, right? I was in Hawaii.
You were there. What were they looking for? Were they looking for dolphins or something when they yeah, you were right there on the boat, right? Brittany might not have been invited on the boat, but Dana, you were. You were.
Right, exactly, exactly. Because I
Um,
was never going to tell Jax. That's why I was invited, and she wasn't.
there we go. You are exactly. So take me back to the beginning of season two when we were gearing up for season two of the Valley. We just had that sort of the first season was kind of landmark season. I think it surprised all of us in how great it was. How are you feeling at the beginning
Actually,
of
I knew
season?
it would be great.
Oh, you
I
did.
just want to say I did know it would be great because a lot of people went into it being like, "We're not going to watch this. This is stupid." But personally, I felt like the three characters that we already knew. I thought that was going to be a great transition for us because those are characters that we love. And I thought it was like an interesting, sort of group that they put together because it's sort of like the best of both worlds. We've got the people that we want to watch, and then we get in this smattering of new people. And because we're watching for the people we want to watch, maybe not so much for the people we don't, we're slowly getting to know them without necessarily wanting to. And then we just get to know all these extra couples that if this cast, let's say, had been a cast of people we didn't know at all, right? Like if they had done a next gen NYC without the housewives kids and it was just a bunch of influencers, it may not have done as well because you sort of need that pull
Of
in of
course,
like
yeah.
those core characters. And from those Vanderpump Rules fans from way back, like for me, I was like, I do think this is going to be good. I don't think this is going to be boring because, yeah, people were like, this is going to be about families and that's just really boring. But we had Kristen and Jax on this show,
Yeah.
right? Like Jax is not living the American dream, obviously. So I just knew it would be interesting. And so, sorry, I just wanted to point
No,
that
it's
out.
okay.
I
No,
apologize
no,
for
I
interrupting you.
think I
I,
think
I
the
always knew
reason
it would be good.
yeah, I don't think it was going to be boring. I wasn't sure I was interested in a show built around Jax and Brittany because at that point
Hmm.
back then, like I was still really in my mind, I still had Brittany looped in with Jax, like
Hmm.
they were a duo, and I was just like, I'm not. I didn't think I was interested, and I didn't think I would. I didn't think I was interested in the new people. But you're right.
Right.
It was the perfect entree. And again, a lot of us were proven wrong. So
For sure. But
so
yeah,
season
I mean,
two,
back then, season
going into
two,
it.
I mean, I hated that we didn't get a reunion. And I
Mhm.
feel like there was so much that was left unsaid. And to be honest with you, I think that's why things just ended up getting so heated between this cast because they're not really allowed to talk about what's going on between filming, right? So I feel like there's so much animosity that built up over time. Like, can you imagine from the end of season one to where things left off between Kristen, Janet, Michelle, all of these people, and then they can't really hash it out at a reunion. Actually, I think even more so for Zach, for example, because he's really the kind of person that needs to get his feelings out. And
Mm.
instead, I feel like he's had to really hold it in for all this time until it's like the appropriate times to say something. And then when he does, it comes out in this very chaotic way sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like because on the one hand, I actually liked that they didn't have a reunion because I thought that just like it helped just sort of okay jump back into filming. We have stuff to talk about. There's good drama. But you're right. It's a double-edged sword because on the other side, it's okay. Nothing was resolved. Nothing was. It was. because Janet and Kristen, they're going to argue regardless. Like they're good adversaries. So like even if they had resolved things at a reunion, let's say, like they could have honestly talked about Janet's interview with me that they talked about at the beginning of the season. Like that could have been talked about at the reunion, and then it would have
Right.
been like there would have been some more fresh drama between them, I'm sure. But you're right. Like it was already up here instead of being down here, and we saw how that played out. So before we get into all of that, we just saw the part 3 of the reunion. What did you think about the reunion overall? Because it was filmed so early in the season too. Like as we all like, I think that only like a couple episodes had aired at that point, and which is really abnormal.
Mhm.
So I just finished part 3 this morning, and I was just like, I wonder how if it would have been how differently it would have looked if they had filmed it, 2 months later.
A lot of people said that because they felt like the fandom reaction wasn't there yet. But I disagree because I feel like everyone went into this season still hating Janet. So I really feel like, yes, that vitriol has exceeded throughout the season, but it was always there. So I don't really feel like there would have been that much of a difference, in my opinion.
Okay.
I feel like the reunion was a little soft in the sense that I feel like everybody was sort of walking on eggshells around Jax, including Andy, because it is such a weird, sensitive issue. I feel like people were sort of looking to Britney to determine whether something is bad or not. I also felt like there was a lot of like almost like choppiness or like not
Mm.
resolve or sorry, not follow up with further things like Jesse sleeping with somebody who was hasn't been married in 25 years. How old is that person? Like, let's follow up, right? Like, there's needs to be a little bit more here. So there was a lot of like back and forths that made no sense with no follow up.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like to me, that's a reflection of just like how much information like we got this year. Like in the show itself, we got a lot. There was a lot of drama, a lot of information. Then we have the 45-minute, sometimes like it was at least half an hour of the after show almost every single week. And that was just like
Right.
so much tea at all times that it was just like I honestly felt like so overwhelmed by all the information we got. And like I think I've probably forgotten a lot of it because we just got
Mhm.
so much of it. And then there was the interviews, and then there was Watch What Happens Live. And then it was a lot. And I think that it's as we'll see today, like there's probably stuff we're not going to talk about because like it's just impossible to to
To
address
cover it
all of
all.
it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I do agree with that like it maybe wouldn't have looked that different. I'm thinking maybe there's probably a couple things from the after show that they maybe would have addressed if they had all seen those episodes, which I'm guessing they hadn't, I'm guessing.
I wasn't sure about that because Danny had said something like Janet said something on the after show, and I was like, oh, so they have seen the after show, but I'm not sure how that all worked with
I
filming because
know.
a lot of it seemed like very tight in terms of time. Like there was an episode of the after show that literally a week or less after Jax had been pulled over or something. There was some
Oh,
situation with there's some legal
okay.
situation and then it was brought up on camera on the after show. I'm like, that happened IRL a week ago. So I don't know, but yes, that totally makes sense. And I feel like that's happened in other shows too, where they feel like they're good, but then once they see the after show or once they see an interview, that's when things change.
Yeah, because I also feel like the after show has shown itself more in other shows' recent reunions. Like it's
Mhm.
become more of a thing. Like I feel like
Right.
we'll see clips of that because they haven't had any other venue to react to that, and
Mhm.
we didn't really get any of that on the Valley in terms of like flashbacks to the after show. So I feel like that maybe that's teeing things up for season 3. I don't know. And then the other thing, going into the reunion, we knew that Jax was leaving the show, quote unquote. At some point in the season, there was that whole big Variety article from Kate Arthur where she got into some of the behind the scenes of like how they've been dealing with Jax and stuff like that. Obviously, in the premiere, we found out about the incident involving him and Britney that happened right before filming, where he threw the coffee table and the bar stools and such. And then and then the reunion, we also find out about the rose bush thing where he pushed her into a rose bush. As you said, no follow up on that, which was quite interesting, I would say.
Mhm.
Um, it's obviously a relief that we won't have to see him anymore. Like I'm good. I'm good having him off TV. I'm glad that we're officially done now that part 3 has
Mhm.
aired. Um, but it's also kind of wild to think about the Valley without Jax Taylor because it's not his show, but he does have a point that I don't think the show would have existed without him. It would like they needed Jax and Brittany along with Kristen to start this show. Doesn't make it his show, but he was integral in getting it started. So it's this weird thing.
For sure, but that doesn't mean he's entitled to be on the show for the rest of his life.
Oh, I'm
Like you
not
can
saying
be
that. No.
helping to start something. and then leave it. You know what I
Of
mean? And
course.
I sort of feel like it's almost moot to keep talking about him. Not that we can't. I just mean like even on the reunion, and correct me if I'm wrong and tell me what you think, but this whole concept of narcissism, and I'm really taking what Britney said, where she was told by a doctor, we can't cure it. So I just feel like this changes all the conversations we have. The conversations we've had with Jax for years on these reunions about him being a work in progress and he's changed today and maybe a little bit here and maybe a little bit there, we were like, okay, maybe there's an option. Maybe there's a possibility for him to change. But now I feel like there just isn't. I feel like he's a
I
lost cause,
agree.
which is sort of a sad thing to say. But that's why I feel like even for Andy to say, like, are you guys still in love with each other? First of all, it's not possible. He's a narcissist. He's not capable of love. Second of all these things where he's saying at the end, where he's like, Brittany, do you feel like we're going to be moving forward? Do you feel like you see a change? Let's not even have, we know that's not even a thing, right? It's not even possible. But then at the same time, and I'm not saying this in any way to defend him, and it's not that, it's actually me being kind of afraid. I'm afraid that this man has lost everything and what
Hmm.
he's going to do that because
Yeah.
he has expressed this is the most important thing in his life, filming this show. And he has lost that plus his bar, which is his second love.
Hmm.
And so he has his son, and that's it. But I'm just, it sucks for Brittany because, he deserves this punishment. He's abusive. He doesn't deserve to have this platform. But now that means he's going to be coming after Brittany for money. He's probably also going to be really bored and bothering her a lot. And so it just sucks that the proper repercussions for something is actually going to harm somebody else.
That's so true. Yeah. And it's like she was she's gotten all this some criticism for like
Yeah.
protecting him or staying in it, but it's like she was in an abusive relationship. Like I'm sorry, like easier said
Well,
than
tell me
done.
how
And
easy it is for
yeah,
you.
and I have never experienced that in my life, but from just hearing about different situations over the years, like it's difficult to get yourself out of that, especially it's somebody you love, it's somebody you have a child with, it's somebody whose finances are totally intertwined with yours. You work together on a show, and she wants to have two paychecks to help provide a life for her son, not just one. And so I completely, empathize with her kind of thing on this, but I'm also so happy that she felt empowered enough to finally break out of it, call out his abuse, his drug use, all the things that he's been doing behind the scenes over the years. Like she finally, like the floodgates opened from her because she felt safe and empowered enough to do that. And obviously it was a
Right.
rocky road. Like there were moments where she was still corresponding with him, maybe when she shouldn't have been, or she was protecting him in certain ways.
That's
Um,
normal.
yeah, it's totally normal, but I'm just so happy that like we finally got on that road with her. And I can only imagine how much more open and free she'll feel in the third season when he's not breathing down her back on camera, you know?
Right. And she's going to be like the main character. And I don't know if you got a sense from the end, you tell me, but when they were doing the toast at the end and Brittany was doing the toast, meaning she's like the main character,
Hmm.
I feel like Jax felt really, really small in that moment. And he was like, shit,
Yeah, I think
I've
you're right.
lost it all. And it went all to Brittany.
I think you're right. And again, though, it gets back to that, like the scheduling of the reunion. Cause I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, okay, he knew he was done at the end of the reunion. But I'm like, again, this was filmed so early that like, I
Ish.
don't think he did. You know what I mean? Like, I think that he, again, as you said, it's the most important thing to him. Like, I think he was fed up with what you're saying and that he felt very small, but I think that he still kind of felt like he had a lifeline somehow into the shot. I don't think that he envisioned it being the end for him yet.
Well, he's never been officially canceled, right? So
Hmm.
it has always worked out for him. He has always been
Right.
able to come back. And
Hmm.
from the sense I got from the beginning of the reunion, Brittany said he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to continue on the show. So my opinion is that maybe there was still conversations happening and
Right.
maybe production wanted to see how the rest of the season played out. But yeah, I don't think he necessarily knew in that moment, but it's never officially happened for him. It's always sort of ended up working out. Even when he left Vanderpump Rules, that was only sort of brought up very recently that that was actually more so a firing. Because back then it was discussed as a mutual agreement. And this is such a random memory of mine. But I remember Amy Schumer being on Watch What Happens Live with Andy. And she was saying, well, Jax was fired. And he goes, no, he wasn't fired. She's like, oh, okay. And I actually
Huh.
remember that because I was like, oh, okay, he's clarifying that it
Yeah.
wasn't that situation. It was a mutual discussion and a mutual agreement. So I just thought that was interesting because it seems more so now that that is what had happened.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's like I want to think that he was just like full on fire, but I don't even know. Maybe that wasn't the case this time. Maybe it was a mutual
Mm-hmm.
thing. And I feel like around the time of like the Variety article and then just like I'm so curious what the catalyst was for it to officially like be decided between them. Because I think the decision was later than we all think it was.
Yeah. Oh, I agree for sure. I
Yeah.
really think it was maybe a week before we got
Mm,
the news officially
wild.
out loud. Yeah.
And I mean, again, I don't even want to rehash it, but it's like thinking about like the whole like quote unquote rehab he was in and the homemade confessionals we got this season from him and just like the rage texting. And it was just like, I think as you said,
That
it's like he
the stalking was
is
wild, right? And how
stalking.
but it was the defense of it too, because every action that he would do that was bad, he'd apologize because he knew he'd need to, but then he'd say, who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
taken that action? And everybody's like, not I, right? None of
Not
your friends
I.
have done those things. And I have to tell you, because I have to listen to his podcast for quote unquote work, and I feel like he's still in this mentality of like, I feel like everyone is doing the same things as me. So I don't understand why I'm the only one who are getting this repercussions. And that just shows that he doesn't understand and he never will. If at this point you
Mm-hmm.
still don't understand how it was different with you and how you are so much more abusive, we don't see Jesse Lally, like stalking Michelle through cameras. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying he's great either, but there's levels of
No,
toxicity of
it's
Bravo
yeah,
men, right?
yeah, it's all
And Jax
relative.
Taylor is all the way up there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, is there anything else to
Sorry, I
say
got
about
heated.
Jax? No. I'm just saying, is there anything else to say about Jax? I'm like, I feel like we're all kind of in agreement on it, honestly. And like,
Yeah.
I want to say that
It's the
my
one
biggest
thing the
take,
Bravo fandom can agree on.
yeah, literally, it's like I want to say the one that my one of my big takeaways from it is just that like I do feel like Britney just showed how great of a mother she is, how devoted to Cruz she is, and the way she talks about his autism diagnosis and
Mhm.
like just that she is so utterly devoted to him and I just admire that a lot. Like, regardless of how you
Me
feel
too.
about how she's handling herself and the friendship stuff that she has going on this season, like, she's getting out of a difficult situation. Jax will
Right.
always be in her life because he's the father of her son, but I'm just happy for this path she's on. I really am.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment on the friendship stuff? Because I have a
Yeah,
thought.
well, yeah, well, so we're
Or
gonna
you
get
can
into that.
I
So
will wait.
yeah,
Okay.
we're gonna because I want to start with Janet and Kristen because that
Okay.
is where we started this season in terms of all of that, and we'll kind of branch off. Um, Obviously, big conflict of the season, central conflict.
Hmm.
I feel like they are really good adversaries. I like them. I like them battling against each other. Like they clearly grind one another's gears, and they can't help one
Hmm.
another. They can't help it. They're both pot stirrers. They're both polarizing figures in different ways. Um, but it started with an interview that Janet did on this podcast, and she made the claim that Zach and Kristen had wished that she had not carried her baby to term. She
And
apologized for what do you say?
there's another piece to that.
No, I
There's
know,
another piece to that.
I know, but that was not on
Oh,
my
that wasn't on your
podcast.
pod?
That was
Okay.
not my podcast. No,
Okay.
she apologized for looping Kristen into it, but she's not going to apologize for the Zach thing because he did say it. And the other thing that he did say is that it came out, it kind of trickled out, but it officially kind of came out that he had also said that he wished that she had succeeded in killing herself. And I thought, I believe Janet completely. And I thought, because Britney told her that he said this to Britney, and Britney told her.
Right.
And I don't think that he really took full ownership of that at the reunion. I think that he sort of shied away from it and sort of they brush his his bad drunk behaviors as him drinking, and it's like everybody has bad behavior when they drink, but I don't know anybody who's ever wished somebody had to have a miscarriage when they're drunk and just be shoved off. Um, so I've just been talking a lot. But what do you make of how that whole situation played out as we're in relation to what Janet repeated about what Zach said
So yeah, it was really complicated. I remember it coming out on your podcast and there being a lot of back and forth in
on
the
social media?
comments.
Yeah.
Um, Kristen was saying that, of course, like, stop trying to make it seem like we don't care about mental health. Let's talk about the reason you went for that 5150 hold, and then just sort of left it there. Then you have Janet saying things like, Kristen Doty, your best friend, wished that I had committed suicide and miscarried, and you never apologized to me at all. So again, there was just so much of that happening behind the
Mm-hmm.
scenes, so much built up animosity about it. When Janet went to apologize, it was a little complicated because she was saying, like, I'm sorry for wrapping you into Zach's demonic behavior. Kristen is the type of friend that will back you no matter what. She is
Mm-hmm.
your ride or die, doesn't
Totally.
matter what you say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just talking about different styles of friendship. Then you have friends who are more like, check you. And then you have the friends that are like, defend you to your face, but put you in your place behind your back. And so I just sort of feel like, you know, she's defending Zach to the death on this. And it's a really disgusting comment. And I don't really feel like he was that sorry. My understanding was that he sort of sent like a canned apology, like a very like cryptic, like I have to apologize because
Yeah,
I'll
totally.
have to do this to stay on the show. So of course that's going to continue to be upsetting for her. I guess maybe I'll just speak a little personally about like the comments in general. Like I've never been pregnant, but the other comment, like that kind of struck a chord for me. Like I've had suicidal ideation in
Mm,
the past. And so I but I've also been the kind of person who's maybe joked about it here and there, which was another comment that Kristen had made, like you've joked about it here and there. So I can understand that mentality, but I'm trying to picture in my head somebody screaming that about me, and I don't think I could ever speak to them again. You know, to
hmm.
me, that comment, the second one, and probably because I've never been pregnant, and probably the pregnancy comment would be more
Sure. Yeah.
gross to someone who has been. But the other comment to me was just it shook me. It shook me. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. It totally makes sense. And it's like, it was just individually, either of those is enough to end a friendship. And I think the back to back like blows of saying those two things, I get Janet not wanting to be associated with with
Yeah.
Zach. And,
Yeah.
um, that doesn't, and so that's like sort of, but it's hard because she roped Kristen into it in sort
Yeah.
of, and sort of, I think she almost wants Kristen to like answer for some of Zach's stuff because he's not doing it maybe. And like,
That's not fair.
I think that that's not fair. And I think to me, one of Janet's biggest issues is just like the way that she tries to take accountability is not like it's not a full version of that. You know what I mean? It's sort of like on her terms. I think she wants to take accountability sometimes. And she is a pot stirrer, but she won't really fully admit it sometimes.
That's the problem.
Her and Kristen both talk about one another to Britney for sure, no question about it in my mind. But like Janet is way more reticent to admit that. So those are the things that I feel like with Kristen in particular, it's like she's not getting there. She's not doing
Yeah.
herself any favors when it comes to that.
But I do want to mention something else because, again, we just don't have a lot of the context. But when this show started, and Jana had pointed out they hadn't been good for a year, there was also the comment that Kristen had brought up in this episode, which I actually remembered from season one, where in the confessional, Janet had said, like, Kristen kind of made it seem like her ex-boyfriend Alex was like the most terrible person, but I was
Right.
around during that time and I saw her do things that were wrong and she admitted to that being wrong. And like picture you as the friend, right? Watching that on screen thinking and I do remember that Janet also put up a boundary with her around that time. So that's probably what was
Hmm.
going on in that year prior and why they weren't good. But at the same time, now looking back, I could kind of understand how Kristen was upset going into that
Of
season or even
course.
seeing that, thinking like, you were my close friend at the time. And now you're saying on TV that like I was the one in the wrong in that relationship. That makes her look so bad. Do you know what I mean? And so I'm not blaming Janet necessarily for that, but there keeps being
Yeah.
like little things that they
Revisionist
each
history, I would
keep
say.
doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's some revisionist history I think that happens. And it's like, it's hard to tell also, like, because a lot of this stuff, part of the reason why the after show of it all is like, I love it,
So
but I
much
also get
context.
kind of, there's so much off camera stuff too that's like, there's so much like his word against her word and her word against her word. It's like, but I think that the confessional was on the season, and I totally understand Kristen's also, like questioning, Janet changing for the show and bringing up things that maybe she would have spoken about differently before cameras went up and all of that. And the other thing that comes into play here is like, you know, Kristen has been stoking the fires of the flame of Janet being a fan and how Janet came into the group. And I'm sort of exhausted by that narrative, to be honest. Like I'm kind of over it
100%.
because I don't think I do think it sort of reminds me of Tamara on OC right now, how she like is bringing up this idea that Jen Pedranti tried on her hair extensions, and then it makes it so she wants to like be single white femaling her and like she wants to be
Right.
her and be in her like it's not that serious, I don't think. I think that it was probably some sort of middle ground also to this whole thing of like, yeah, she was a fan. She probably thought it was cool that she was talking to the Vanderpump Rules cast members, but like they're not going to let her. These people aren't letting in just anybody, and so like there's a bill. I don't know. It's just that narrative has
Here's
been big in their friendship, and I'm kind of or in their dynamic, and I'm kind of over it.
I'm over it. And I also feel like it's trying to create a certain image, a narrative of like she's scary, she's dangerous, she's like a stalker fan. When
Yeah.
like Gibson, weren't you at like Lindsay Hubbard's baby shower? I mean, like
Yes.
after a while, we all get involved with these people because I mean, she wasn't a podcaster, for example. She met her in an organic way, or Sheena, I mean. But if I go to BravoCon and I run into the Vanderpump Rules cast and they ask me to come to lunch with them, I'm not saying no. And if
Hmm.
they want to become my friend, I'm probably not going to say no, right?
Right.
And like as we continue
Totally.
to interact with these people, especially you and I in this industry, you do sort of slowly maybe become friends with them. And we're obviously dealing with that on OC as well. And that dichotomy, whether that's like an appropriate thing or a not appropriate thing,
Hmm.
or where it's like seedy and gross, or whether it's normal. And it's confusing, but she's been in the group for 8 years. Like, I'm sorry, that's a
Hmm.
long game. That's a really long game. I,
Yeah.
I, I'm not on that. Just on that one front, I think that's kind of ridiculous, the
Yeah,
whole
for
thing.
sure. And I do think you mentioned how long they've sort of been in the same circle. It's like that is a reminder though that like maybe why this dynamic is so kind of compelling and kind of interesting is because there is so much there and there's so much for them to bring back up. And maybe it's things that they have secretly sort of been carrying and they haven't addressed with one another. And like that is why, as you said, this show is always going to work because
Yeah,
there is this like really intense history with these people. And
right.
Kristen's probably felt this about Janet since the beginning. It was probably this sort of like, even though they were quote unquote best friends, I guess, for a while there before the show started, there was probably a thing in the back of her head of like maybe being a little suspicious of how Janet came into the group, but she still liked her enough to be her friend.
You
But now,
think?
yeah, now she's bringing it up. You know what I mean? Now she's kind of unearthing it.
I mean, I used to listen to them together on Kristen's podcast like for years. They were very close.
I
And
believe
like,
it.
yeah, I mean, and I do think it is the Alex situation that sort of tipped it off. But we didn't know Janet as a fandom until season 1, and then we're
Hmm.
being told that she's changed. So we don't know any different. We only have the other cast members who claim to have known her before to rely on because we didn't know her then.
Did she see, you said you were listening to her for a while. Did she seem like a different person to you, just as a listener?
No, but
Okay.
I mean, she wasn't on those episodes supposed to be taking accountability for anything. So
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
I don't know, right? It's that's the only real thing that's bothering me about her is that she'll just never take any ownership for anything and then we'll always try to flip it back on somebody else. And
Yeah,
that's just where I struggle because even when Kristen is being messy, because honestly, I feel like they're quite the same, right? Like you have Janet putting herself in situations that are none of her business, i.e., the job of reality TV. You have Kristen saying at the end of the episode 3, one of my like things that I'm known for is getting involved in other people's business when it's
right.
not my
And
business,
she'll
right? So
admit
you
it.
girls are the same, but she'll say, I'm a jerk. I did this to be a jerk. While you don't have Janet doing the same. And I think that's the
Yeah, I
difference.
think Janet would be really wise going forward to take a page from Kristen's book in that way. You're absolutely correct on that. No,
She
honestly,
would
it's
hate to
like,
hear that.
but, but I think, yeah, she would, but it's like I just want her to be slightly more in on the joke if she can. Not the joke, you know
Yes.
what I mean? Just like a little bit more. I think that maybe because of like all the hate that she's gotten, she's become even more sort of like self-serious. I think she's really sensitive, and I understand that. But that if you're in this job, like you gotta try to sand that down a little bit. You know what I mean? You have to
Yeah.
try to push back against that.
Because she really focuses on words and,
Hmm.
she determines the meaning behind them. Like a word, I mean, I can say the word apple. And if I say apple, it means apple. But if I say apple, that could be very aggressive. And if I'm like
Right, right.
apple, that could be like flirty, right? So she will sometimes take words to mean more than they were meant to mean. And I thought that that was an interesting scene we saw in the finale between Janet and Kristen, where Kristen's like,
Mm,
you know me, I use colorful words, right? And like,
right.
I mean, I used to call my cat a whore. Like, I don't mean she's an actual whore. It's just like something I would say. So if Janet knows Kristen and knows that's how she talks, I don't really understand why she doesn't get that unless she was always that way and maybe
Mm,
always took words very seriously. I don't know.
right, right. And the other thing that I think that has kind of not done Janet any favors, I think there's a slight hypocrisy in here, but Janet and Jason have sort of taken it upon themselves. I don't think that Jasmine necessarily asked them to do this, but they have sort of been her
Right.
crusaders in this whole thing with Danny. And I think that on the one hand, it's admirable they're trying to be good friends, but on the other, they're trying to make her issue their issue, and that
Mhm.
is, to me, the part of this that I think is a little bit, um, just they shouldn't be doing that. And obviously,
Right.
as word choice, they're sort of technically labeling it as like sexual assault and what have you. And then I do think there's a slight hypocrisy in that, like, Kristen is allowed to be Danny and Nia's crusader. Like, she's allowed to come. Like, I think that to me is like a little bit. I think the difference is that Danny and Nia sort of gave her the go to do it, and while Jason and Janet
Oh,
did
okay.
not get the green flag from Jasmine, it seems. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
that to me is the difference. But I do think there's a slight thing there.
there
But that
is,
just
but
gets
I
at
do
your
think
word
by
choice. Yeah.
Yeah, but I do think by the end, like I really don't think Jasmine, or sorry, I don't think Janet was necessarily like by the end really still sticking up for Jasmine because they weren't really close by the end of it. I mean, think about the beach scene. So
Hmm.
anytime after the beach scene that Janet is bringing up the Danny stuff, I don't think she was really doing it to protect Jasmine.
And also, Kristen brought them up on the boat.
Right.
She did.
Right.
Like she did. Like Janet went there, but Kristen brought them up. Um,
Right.
we'll get into Danny and Nia in a second, but I just want to pause on the Zach, Kristen, Brittany, Janet friendship
Yes,
dynamic, which
please.
I've
Yes.
spoken about this on my podcast and how I think it's just like really natural and compelling, and like it's clearly that is like a real thing that's going on in this four-person group. It's like they're all playing tug of war over Britney. You know what I mean? And like I think that's a real thing that's happening. I think Britney doesn't know how to handle it. I think that Britney is a good friend to all of them in the way that she can be without. I don't think that she ever kind of buys into the shit talking that they all probably do about each other to her. But that's a really difficult position to be in. And I think in the reunion we saw like a couple times where they're like, right, Brittany, like, didn't you say that or didn't? And she kind of had to back down a little bit. You know what I mean? Like we kind of witnessed that because she, again, is in the middle of all of this. What do you make of this tug of war over Brittany Cartwright? Like it's quite interesting.
First of all, like, good for you, girl.
Yeah, I
So many
know.
people are so obsessed with you. But here's what I have to say. This is my opinion on it all, and I think it's like more of an overarching thought. Brittany is going through an extremely contentious divorce with somebody who is harassing her, stalking her. She's basically a single mom right now. She's raising an
Hmm.
autistic child. She does not have time or the bandwidth to be your guys' best friends in
Hmm.
the way that maybe you need. And if she is not being able to be the friend that you need, then bye. Because, as we grow and we age, our friendships change, they ebb and flow. She's a
Totally.
mother now. I mean, the friend that Zach, for example, Zach and Brittany, when they were friends in their 20s, that's going to be a different friendship than now. And so I honestly thought it was not cool for any of these people to continuously bring this up to her this season when she is going through so much. Like, I'll give an example. I had a friend who was married to a narcissist, had 3 kids, was going through this whole divorce. And do you know what my friendship expectations for her during that time? Zero,
Mm.
because she is going through so much. I'm not like, why aren't you calling me back? Why aren't you spending time with me? Because she's fucking busy. You know what I mean? She's going through a lot. Like, it's just to me wild that you're making someone try to play this tug of war. Also, I don't know how you feel on it because like I always kind of go back and forth. But like if I'm not friends with someone anymore, would I love my friends to also follow suit? Of course, but I can't require it and it wouldn't
No.
be fair. In my heart of hearts, is that what I want? Of course, but I just don't think it's fair for anyone to be asking her to stop being friends with the other.
Yeah, and I think that the one caveat to that would be like if some big thing happens, some
Yes.
big right. But
Yes.
and I think Kristen and Janet both view what one another has done to each other as like a big enough thing for Brittany to call it off between the other, but Brittany doesn't see it that way, right? So it's this weird like they're all interpreting things differently, and just I also think it's a lot of this is like Zach and then Kristen are sort of Brittany's older friends. They've known her for
Right.
longer, and Janet's a newer presence in this group. And that is a classic thing, as you said, like, people change and friendships evolve and lifestyles change. And sometimes like the old friends get really frustrated just because there is a new friend, a new best friend in the mix. And
Right.
I actually, my read on it kind of is that Brittany is a little bit more loyal to Janet, or like she kind of has, maybe not more loyal to her, maybe that's the wrong way to put it. I think that she connects more with Janet in a sort of more natural way right now than she does with Zach and Chris. And I think they're fighting hard to push against that in a way. And they don't make it easy for either side of the group, but there's a
What's funny? It's because they're
disconnect.
saying to her, we don't understand how you're still friends with her. We don't get how you like her. Well, guys, you were very close friends with Janet at some point. So it's
Yeah,
probably for
that's
whatever
true.
reasons Brittany
That's true.
is friends with her now, right?
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Zach and Kristen and Janet's friendship is not in a good place. So they don't want to spend time with her and don't enjoy her as a person. But Brittany and Janet's friendship has remained stable. So all the things that Kristen and Zach may have liked about Janet before they hated Janet, Brittany still gets from Janet.
Right, right. And then like I just think of this idea, and we can explore this a little bit deeper at the very end, but of like let's say Sheena is added to this cast in a bigger way
Mhm.
for next season. She is on the Janet side of that, and that
Right.
complicates it even more. But then and like I feel like
And
Sheena
Lala.
and Lala, like I feel
Mhm.
like Sheena has a maybe better chance of being more prominent on this show than Lala does right now. But like, you know, then Sheena's like a guest on Watch Happens Live when Zach's on, and wasn't Zach? Did Zach appear at one of Sheena's book tour events or something like
Yeah.
so like they aren't like on they're not like not speaking to one another. So there's this really
But they weren't.
interesting.
And they
Right,
recently
right. But it's
reconciled.
like
Yeah.
that. But if like I guess Zach unblocked Janet, so maybe there is hope. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it, but I am personally compelled by it. I really am.
Mhm.
I think it's interesting.
I'm actually curious if they're still unblocked because remember that was filmed so long ago and
Yeah,
there's
that's
been
true.
so much
That's true.
happening online since, even just
That's a good
between the two of
reminder.
them fighting. So,
That's a good
I
reminder.
mean, my understanding is that the way the reunion sort of ended was like, yeah, we'll all start working on our friendships, and
And
that
then the show
things just
airs.
got way, way, way worse. I
Yeah.
think that Janet even blocked Jasmine just because of all the things that Jasmine has been
Mm.
saying about her online. And even Kristen says that. She's like, Jasmine, you can't sit here and say, like, oh, Janet, yeah, we're like sisters, we're like family, and so I'll always love you. And Kristen's like, you talk a lot of shit about her in our
I
group
don't.
chat.
Yeah,
So
I don't
it is
really
two-faced.
get. I don't really have a good grasp on Jasmine's true like
Motive.
just like I feel like she talks out of both sides of her mouth and like
Yeah,
doesn't really back it up at the reunion. She wasn't really backing it
right.
up. Um, I like that she's kind of playing both sides of the fence. Like I think that's good for reality too. It's good for the show. But I don't have a good grasp on like what her motive is or what who she's really loyal to. I don't really. Do you have a good grasp on that?
I feel, Jason alluded to her trying to be manipulated by Luke and Kristen, and I don't think it's that. I think she came into the first season, didn't have much of a storyline. She also didn't
Right.
have a much of a storyline this season. I really don't know why the engagement wasn't shown on camera. That would have been great.
Hmm.
But I felt like she sort of had to go where the wind was blowing. And the only reason I say that about her specifically is because she's the only one who had a real long-standing friendship with Janet. They
Hmm.
used to live in the same building. They've been friends for many, many years. And I still don't understand what it is that Jasmine is upset about with Janet. Even at the beach, she's not actually saying it, except for like, you're a vibe killer, you're giving Karen energy, etc., but not like one time you said X to me and that upset me. Like I'm still just trying to
Right.
figure out
It's
what
very
is the problem.
nebulous. Hmm.
Right. And you still see her saying to Jason, like, I love you, Jason, you're amazing. And Jason, thank you so much for standing up for me with the Danny stuff. What are you talking about? I thought you wanted them not to talk about it, right? So I feel like she's just doing it for the clout. And I hate to say that, I really do, but like she doesn't seem to be genuine to me. I feel like she's just going with the popular vote.
Mm, that's a good way to put it. I do, and I'm glad that we did get a little. She got more camera time this season. Like I think that was, I would say that that was one of the biggest raps against season one was sort of like Zach and her both sort of being relegated to like side characters, and we did get more from both of them. I think with Zach and Jasmine, I really liked Zach's scenes with Benji and hearing more about that story. I thought that was really like that was new. You know, that was a very like we don't really hear much about that kind of thing, and I like that we saw a little bit of both Benji and Melissa, but neither of them really pops on camera. You know what I mean? Like they clearly have good relationships. They seem like good people, and they seem happy together. But I think that maybe is like out of all these couples, like their other half like isn't maybe made for TV in the way that the other couples are on both sides.
Maybe, but maybe we don't even know. Like Benji did
But
not, I
I
did
can
not
tell
even hear
though.
his voice
You can
until like,
tell. You can
but
tell.
Melissa was screaming on the boat. She was like, "Stop talking." I was like, "They just got potential." Keep the
Maybe.
screaming.
I don't know. I wasn't. I'm not convinced. I'm happy to
Okay.
be. I'm happy to be proven wrong. But that to me was like. I think if producers saw even more potential in that, maybe we would have seen more. I don't know. That's my
Okay.
hunch about it. Um, I said I would loop back to Danny and Nia.
Mhm.
I know that the viewers do not agree with me. I think that it's clear that Danny is a really bad drunk. He becomes a creep and a perv, and he has a track record of not. I'm not saying, as Janet was maybe implying, that he's
Right.
always grabbing women. I think that's happened maybe once, maybe twice, but he has been kicked out of bars. We've heard Nia's always dragging him out when he's drinking, always dragging him out early and speaking for him.
Yeah.
I think the thing where Britney felt uncomfortable, she had clearly told Michelle that, and then in the reunion, it was another one of those instances where she walked back whatever she said to downplay it. I think that she genuinely felt uncomfortable that night that she was talking about, where he was hitting on her, and so I think it's very clear. I don't think he's an alcoholic. I don't think he has like some like day to day drinking problem, but I think that he's a bad drunk, and that's maybe the
Mhm.
way it should have. But I think that the way that it was sort of the implications that were being made by Janet and Jason and sort of the sort of bit I think it was made to feel like a bigger thing. So I think that
Right.
that's where it went wrong. But I do believe at the
Yeah.
core there is an issue there, personally.
I agree. And I think I completely concur with you because I think what they were doing was, you have this other guy, Jax Taylor, there, who is an actual alcoholic, and you have
Hmm.
other people on the cast who are way bigger drinkers. So it really seemed like they were focusing so much on this.
Totally.
I kind of agree with Jason when he's like, everyone on this stage has a problem with alcohol because I'm sorry, they do. This is why this cast works. And it's but the problem is you can't berate someone into admitting to having a
Totally.
drinking problem.
Hmm.
Think about last year with Shannon and Tamra on OC, right? You
Mm.
can't scream at someone that you're an alcoholic and actually expect that they're going to go home and stop drinking. That's not
Hmm.
realistic. And it is possible that Danny and Nia are having these conversations offline, and or maybe they're not. Maybe he's not even in a place to be ready to admit that yet. And that's also okay. You can't get mad at someone for not that being in that place yet to admit that they have a
But
problem,
I
I
think, but I think
guess,
you
right?
can
That
get
sort of
mad. But I
feels
think
weird.
you can get mad at him for making people uncomfortable and grabbing
Yes,
somebody's butt.
absolutely.
And so it's like
Yes.
I totally agree. And I think that it was just mishandled on the Janet and Jason side in terms and what also as you sort of got was we're getting at what also hurt their case was that they and I'm guessing they were doing this to protect Britney and to help her, but like they didn't have the same ire for Jax that they showed on camera. Like they didn't bring it to him in that same way. And I think that again they
Right.
were trying to be sensitive of the situation, but it came across as making Danny feel like he was his misdeeds were way bigger than Jax, which is like they're on different levels completely. And so
Hmm.
that was really where they lost people, I think, with this, because at the core there was something there. There was,
Right.
but they latched onto the
Absolutely.
wrong things, I think, in the
Yeah,
wrong
and then
way.
even in the third reunion with Janet saying like we do have to keep talking about this. He has to take accountability. And he did though. Like if we're still talking about
Yeah.
the Jasmine incident, he did. And so that's what just made it so complicated. And like if you're right, and if this is true that he is a bad drunk and he has done these creepy things before, now no one is going to believe that, and everyone is sort of going to downplay all of that because of the way that Janet mishandled this situation. Do you know what I mean? Because if you even look at the situation about the second incident, which is the I like little girls in short skirts or something like that, that
Right. I
he
forgot about
allegedly
that
said at a
one.
bar,
Right.
right? So first Janet said that she heard that from Jason, and Jason said, I didn't say that. Then Brittany said, I didn't say that, right? So it's sort of like it takes away the credibility
Hmm. For
of
sure.
the incident. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for
Unfortunately.
sure. Yeah, and that was one of the rare instances where Jason really strayed from Janet. You know what I mean? That was it's interesting they wouldn't have had their story kind of correct in that moment, I
Right.
would say.
And the producer
Um,
called her on that too. She's like, can we
right,
just talk to Jason? And he
right,
said no.
right. Um, and I think getting into that, it's like I think the other thing that sort of I think hurts Jason and Janet overall, sort of in this situation, but also just beyond this, we don't get that much personal story from them, and I don't think that's their fault. I'm sure they're filming personal scenes. There's no way they're
Oh,
not.
you think? Okay.
They're all filming personal scenes. That's how the show works. But they always the producers and the editors will cut things down to make room for the good drama. And I think that Jason and Janet, they get very involved, particularly Janet, get very involved in other people's issues and she's playing a role here. She's being a pot stir, and that is a good thing for a reality show.
Mhm.
But I think one, we have to see that versus maybe a not as interesting personal scene. You know what I mean? I don't think Jason and Janet have that much drama in their life as a couple. I think they're a pretty solid couple. And so
That's what they said, right? They said we're a boring couple. So
and I think
maybe
that
that's
that
why those
and
scenes
that
got cut.
exactly. And what's going to be the first thing that gets cut when you need to make time is a boring personal scene. And that's what
Hmm.
happens on every Bravo show. There's so much that gets cut. And
Right.
so that but then it makes it so on the show that's all we're seeing of them is
Hmm.
being involved in other people's issues. And so it's like
That's a great point.
that's where it again it does themselves a disservice, I guess. I guess they can't control what makes it into the show, but you know?
No, but I think that the fandom's opinion or viewpoint, because like this is something we know a little bit just more behind the scenes, just because we do this sort of work, or I didn't until a second ago. I was just like, are they filming personal scenes? But like a lot of people in the
Definitely.
fandom were saying, well, they're just focusing on everybody else because they're boring and there's no drama, and so that's what's going on. But yeah, that may not be the case. They may actually be filming all those scenes, but yeah, I mean, very statistically, Bravo takes out scenes that don't have drama in them. That happens
Hmm.
all the time. So
Yeah.
maybe they are correct when they say their relationship is boring and production wants to focus on the drama that they're creating with others because them sitting at home with their baby just apparently isn't interesting.
And that is all great for their real life relationship and marriage and family. It's not good for their public image on the show. And so it's this
Right.
weird, you got to take one or the other. You can't have it all. I hope they can get it more balanced for them just for their sake, honestly, in the future. But right now it's completely unbalanced for them. And that's not the best. Is there anything else to say about Nia and Danny? I don't find, I find them to be kind of boring, to be honest. Like I'm not super intrigued by them. I think they seem like a pretty solid couple and they seem to be on the same page, which is great. Is there anything else to say from your perspective on them?
I think they're a nice couple. I it's interesting that people were saying in the comments like, get rid of Janet and Jason and give Danny and Nia a show called Four Under Four. And it's like, guys, remember in season one, not much was going on, right? Like we're only focusing on Danny because Janet is making us
I
focus on
can't.
Danny. So I honestly think a show about them and their four kids would be pretty boring.
Never
But I want
happening.
to point something out. With Jax Taylor now being gone, like we were focusing on Danny anyway, but with Jax Taylor being gone, so our real drug addict being gone, now they have to find the next best one, right? So I
Mm.
I think it's possible we are still going to be focusing on Danny and his drinking next season, or another one of these men and their drinking.
Also, I'm sorry, wanting a show about Nia and Danny and their kids. Like, what if this is where I feel like this season of The Valley, I have felt less aligned with the viewership than I maybe ever have. Like, it's
Me
just,
too.
what do you want to watch? I'm like, that is not, it like, even Tardy for the Party is better than that. Like, I just don't, and again, like, they seem like very nice people, but I'm like, that is not an interesting reality show. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
just not.
Like I think people don't understand the concept of a necessary villain. However, I don't think that Janet and Jason are the best villains. Like I think Jesse
They're
Lally is
not,
a
no.
lovely villain. He's like a nice light toxicity, but whatever Janet and Jason are doing is kind of like an annoying villain, I guess. And so it's just not landing the same way. While like I feel like with Tamara, well, maybe you're 50-50, but like a lot of the fandom does understand that she's a necessary evil,
Hmm.
while here nobody's on that board. But again, I think it's because they're just not doing a great job as villains,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
that
It's
makes
like
sense.
I think people like hate to hate them versus love to hate them.
Hmm.
That's sort of the general sentiment, and they just don't come across as very likable on the show,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
Hmm.
All right, last big topic, and I wanted to save the other big couple for the end here. Jesse and Michelle.
Oh, I forgot about them.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, and that's like Jesse and Michelle were kind of the moment on this season, and like
Hmm.
I thought that was good drama to me, and they're like they can't help themselves by just going at one another. Where did you to me for me it was a roller coaster with them. Where did you find yourself sort of where was the wind blowing you within their drama this year?
I hate to admit, like, wanting to be on his side because, as a strong feminist, like, I just felt very weird being on the side of this, like, toxic man, right? And over time, I've sort of been able to articulate what it is. I think,
Okay.
and or even Michelle was able to articulate what it is in the reunion. She's like, I'm quiet, I'm not emotional, I am sort of stoic, while Jesse is a very emotional man and he cries. And it's hard for us not to, succumb to an emotional man, right? Like a man is crying, it's hard not to want to give him a hug. And so, but he's also funny
Hmm.
and she's not funny. And so it's difficult because he's saying these horrific things, right? He's calling her a whore. He's being awful. And even bringing up the cheating on camera was awful because he promised her he wouldn't and then he kept doing it. So I understand on her perspective why she kind of kept, freaking out and having a difficult season. That totally made sense. While he's on the other end enjoying these little digs at her, right? So
Hmm.
it's hard because you see in the reunion where he'll be like, he speaks very calmly and softly. You're weaponizing Isabella, right? But if you say it
Hmm.
like that, it makes you sound like you're a really sweet man. While I think on the back end, he really is awful. If like these stories about not letting Isabella see the grandmother, I mean, these
Hmm.
things sound really awful, but because we're not really seeing them fully play out, we're not really seeing it fleshed out. We only get these little bits, and then Jesse will top it off with something hilarious. We're like, we love him.
Yeah,
So
he's charming.
I know I feel for her. I do. I feel like this was a really shitty situation, shitty divorce, and now her and Aaron are no
Hmm.
longer together. So that sucks, especially bringing your daughter into a home with somebody else. And
Yeah, it's
probably
hard.
Jesse is on the other end being like, I
Yeah, of
told you
course.
so.
He's rubbing in her face.
Oh, 100%. But I think they're really interesting to watch. That being said, I feel like a lot of people are like, are we going to keep seeing them? And because their relationship itself is over. So we would be watching them, I guess, separately. But it is odd to see them on like cast trips together or interacting together outside of Isabella. But yeah, I still find them interesting.
Me
And
too.
when I was watching season one, and I'm sure you feel the same way, the fact that these two people were ever happy is
I
wild to me. I
know.
cannot picture it. Even when they show us old pictures, I still find it wild. And I remember watching season one and thinking, I wish we had a little more backstory on these people. And that's sort of kind of one of the down parts of not knowing these people from the beginning, like we did with Jax, Brittany, and the other one, Kristen. And
Yeah, right.
so I feel like we just didn't get a lot of that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, as we've grown to know them, I've grown to really find them interesting. I know a lot of people feel like Michelle is boring, but them together or their contention together, I find quite interesting.
Yeah, and I actually don't even find her boring. Like I think that probably what even makes it feel more that way is that like her voice is so
The voice, yeah.
her delivery is so like dry and whatever. I don't really find her boring, and I think like I like when she gets activated too, and she gets
Hmm.
activated. Like they both get
Hmm.
activated, and that's good. And
Yeah,
I think they both sort of like massage the truth a little bit to make it look good from their side of the
yeah,
fence. I think they've both done things wrong in their marriage, and I think you're right. Like it's hard to imagine them really happy together. I feel like they actually, from what I'm picking up, they were really happy before they had a kid, and I think that like
yeah.
really broke their relationship. But they both obviously are very. I think they both seem like good parents to Isabella generally.
Hmm.
Like I think that that's,
Yeah,
but that hurt their relationship. I think, or
yeah.
because I think they had like it sounded like they had like a really like high life lifestyle. Like they were like
Right.
living large and maybe beyond their means, as we've heard. Um, I would say that Jesse being his own lawyer and like drawing out their divorce just for shits and gigs, like and like draining her bank account, which is how she's paying for their daughter's life. Like that to me is like tells me everything I need to know. I agree, he's so charming. I do enjoy watching him. I think he does have a
Charming,
sweet
that's what it
side,
is. Hmm.
but I do think behind the scenes he's doing way more of the dirty work, and I think that
Yeah.
he uses the fact that she cheated on him to sort of cloak all of that and make it okay. Can you, from my perspective, did she only admit to cheating like by kissing somebody else, or did she admit to cheating like having
It
like
was
sleeping?
confusing.
Yeah, I'm a little confused about what she has acknowledged and admitted to. Do you know?
I believe all she has acknowledged and admitted to is kissing
Yeah.
someone, and then
Okay.
I think she dated someone as well. But no, I don't think she admitted to sleeping with someone. But it was confusing because we
It
were getting,
was.
again, all these little bits of stories. And this person that uh, Kristen was talking about, who's that? Right? Like, I'm still confused. And then there was somebody that Luke was talking about where he's like, Michelle
And
was
the
seeing
director from
someone
last
and then
year.
walked in on him. What? Who's that? Right? So, how many guys
Yeah.
are there? And Quentin Tarantino, right? So, how many guys are there? It's
I
really
know it's
confusing.
confusing. It's really confusing. And like I think Jesse is sort of taking liberty still. He
Yeah.
doesn't believe that Aaron and Michelle didn't have any overlap with him, and I think that she has denied that fully. But so I think that's maybe where, so that part is still a lot of gray area. I think that he uses that to sort of excuse his own sort of, fucking with her. Basically, that's what he's
Yeah.
doing at the end of the day. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that he has this girlfriend, and it was so. I think the most one of the most interesting parts of the whole reunion was Andy shutting Jesse down over the girlfriend like having an issue with them wanting to have a camera in her face when she showed up to a film event, and
Right.
he was like, dude, we're on a fucking TV show. That the people who are wanting to mic your girlfriend are doing their jobs. And that was the part of that fire was because she's sent all these cease and desists to people, and they've cut things. I know for a fact they've cut things out of the show about people talking about her. And
Okay.
Like, and so because of that, like she's threatening legal action, so it's threatening production, and that's sometimes when Andy gets the most activated because it's sort
Oh,
of
okay.
hitting the, it sort of taints the like the not the authenticity of the show, but it sort of taints the production of the show because
Yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean, and like so his whole his girlfriend thing, I don't know how we're gonna possibly follow that thread if she has legal issues with being chatted about.
For sure. And the one thing I sort of have to disagree with Andy on is like you can't force her. I mean, she hasn't signed anything, right? Like put a boom over her head, but like until she signs a release, you can't really do anything with that. My understanding is she doesn't want to be on the show. And we've had this before, right? Like Stassi and Patrick, Lala and Randall. Jesse cannot force her to be on the show. It would be ideal, obviously. I don't know what's going to happen in that going forward, but I do know that she has a really traumatic past. I don't know if you know about it. She was kidnapped in
Mm-mm.
her early 20s. So I
Mm.
feel like there's just like a lot in her life that, she has a whole podcast about it. She's like a mental health advocate and everything. So I think there's like a little more to it about being on camera and being on TV than just being
Yeah,
talked about.
but the difference between those situations that you talked about, where they weren't on camera, they could still be talked about.
Yeah,
And this woman doesn't want them to say her name or to talk about her at all. And
that's yeah, unrealistic.
that's prohibitive. You know what I mean? And like that's it's honestly like the kind of thing where I'm like, Jesse seems like maybe the kind of guy that he could like, if he knows that his relationship is holding back his career, I could see him dumping her, to be honest. Like unless things
I mean, I
change.
hear they're breaking up all the time, right? So who's to
Okay,
know?
so like I could see her being in the past if that's really holding him back. And he doesn't want to be on the bad side of Andy. Come on. Like he wants to be beloved by Andy, as they all do, but
Yeah.
he especially, you can tell. And so I could see that moment sort of rocking him a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, it rocked me. It rocked Zach. He like grabbed Jasmine's arm. He's like, it was
Yeah, it was
almost like,
wild.
daddy giving you a spanking sort of situation.
Yeah.
Daddy Andy.
Yeah. And the last thing I kind of want to mention is I saw right before we signed on to record this, you put a clip out from your podcast about this where you talked about how the Michelle and Kristen dynamic was really not explored this season, even though there's a lot
Hmm.
there. Like even in this part
Right.
three of the reunion, there was unaired footage of Michelle having an issue putting on the shirt that you're wearing.
That I'm wearing. How
And
dare you, Michelle?
like
It's a great shirt.
there's a
And you
lot
got it for free.
that's a loaded dynamic, and we didn't really
Hmm.
explore that as you pointed out. And I think that's especially interesting given the new alliance between Kristen and Jesse this season, which was exactly that, an
Hmm.
alliance in my perspective, at least from the beginning. Maybe it turned
Hmm.
into a real friendship. So that's something that I have my eye on as since you pointed it out. I'm like, that you have a point there. You really do.
I wonder. I mean, I don't know the reason. I wonder if maybe Michelle just thought it was best to sort of just stay quiet, given how she could see what was happening between Janet and Kristen, and that
Hmm.
wasn't going well. We did see that one scene between them at the Mexican restaurant, which was shut down
Yeah.
pretty quickly, but that was really their only interaction this season. And it's like they ended season one on terrible terms. We're on the same cast, but we're like sort of not talking to each other, and also nobody noticed.
Hmm.
Isn't that odd that like we're all on the same cast, but there's these two people that no one seemed to notice, didn't really speak at all for the entire
Yeah.
season,
It's
and
so
it wasn't a
interesting.
problem.
Yeah, and that's honestly kudos to both of them, honestly, because they if they
Hmm.
don't like each other and they have big issues with one another, but they can still coexist like that. More people could learn from that from their example,
100.
honestly. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a really good point.
Every
So
housewife could learn from that.
yeah, totally. To end here, let's think about season three. And a lot's going to change with the show just because Jax is not going to be there. Like that inherently will change a lot of what we're going to see on the Valley. Um, there's obviously the whole topic of Sheena and Lala and Schwartz and people from that universe being added, despite what many fans feel.
Hmm.
What do you want to see in season three? Like, what are your hopes for what the show looks like in a third go around?
Well, honestly, I never thought about that because I usually try to think in terms of realistic as opposed to what I want. And what I think is going to happen is that if you're adding in people like Sheena and Lala, and then Michelle is already on Janet's side, you actually have more people on Janet's side because right now, the way the reunion ended, Janet has no one to film with besides Jason and Michelle, I
Mm,
guess. So even if you think about back to the Hawaii trip and how Jason and Janet were sort of secluded in their room while the
totally.
others were outside, I mean, this is such an awkward dynamic. How are we going to go forward? Especially, like I said, with how contentious it's been in the comments. And I really don't think Kristen and Zach and Janet filming in a week from now is gonna change
Hmm.
anything. I don't think they're all gonna be buddy buddy. So I think that's going to be good for Janet in a sense because she's going to have people on her side. But I wonder, I'd also really like, okay, here's something I'd like to see. I would like to see Kristen and Sheena because they were
Totally.
in some scenes together this season, but we never actually saw them interact. I've seen them have some contention online when it comes to Janet or other things. I have also heard Sheena say on her podcast, well, I saw Kristen at something and we made up and we're fine. So I do think that they're at the same time back and forth a little bit too. So I would really like to see that
Hmm.
relationship because that is one of our OG relationships
It
from
is.
2013. So I would like to see that play out a bit
Talk
more,
about history. I mean, there's a lot to
right?
unpack there, and that I also think that like if they brought Sheena in and that was sort of something that we really kind of focused on, I think it would actually be a really good thing for Sheena in the way of like I think people are already sort of like, okay, if she's going to be on the show, we're going to be talking about the Brock cheating thing from several years ago, and like no,
So
and
old
yeah,
though.
and I think a lot of people are frustrated by that, just the idea of that. And so if they want
Hmm.
to bring Sheena in, I agree, kind of balance out the cast. I love Sheena. I would love to see her on the show, but I understand the frustrations. But I think focusing on that would sort of harken back to the glory days that we all love, and it would bring up they would I'm sure there would be like footage from back in the day that would make it onto the show, and so like it would scratch
Oh,
that itch in a way that I think would be
yes.
pretty smart.
Those were the best days of our lives.
Period. Yeah, the other thing that I just want to say for season 3, I think it's so important for the show to just find some humor because
Yes, yes.
I didn't laugh during season 2 of The Valley. I don't maybe probably less than 5 times. I can count them on one hand. And you know, we love the drama. I'm not complaining about that at all. I never would. But and maybe it's just the dark cloud that Jax represented. But like I do come to Bravo shows to laugh. Like I expect to laugh at least once an episode. Like I like the Bravo wink that Andy always talks about. Like it has to have this cheekiness, this campiness, and I
Yeah.
that is missing from this show. And it's dire to me. Like by the end of the season, I was exhausted. I wasn't looking forward really to watching it by like the last third of it. So that is my biggest wish for season 3 of The Valley is just make us laugh a little bit more. Like don't like
Yeah.
find some more balance in the tone of the show. I think
Right.
that's really important. I really do.
I completely agree. I feel like the fandom even concurs. A lot of people said they weren't even watching this season because it was too dark and they were actually referring to podcasts instead. I'll listen to the podcasts for
Right.
the recaps, but I won't actually watch the show. Andy has always said all Bravo shows are intended to be comedies. So
Hmm.
if we're walking away from it feeling heavy and gross, it's not giving the levity that we need. So I completely agree. We need those light moments. Whoever's going to give that to us, I don't know, but
Right.
we need that. I
Yeah, and,
100%
and and
agree with
here's
you.
and the thing is, it's like Kristen Doty is a funny woman. You know what I mean? Zach Wickham, a funny guy. Like there are some funny people on this cast. They
Mhm.
just don't have the opportunities to really show it, and it's not really highlighted.
Yeah. Hmm.
So it's not like they don't have the talent there. You know what I
Right.
mean?
So
Oh my God.
talented.
Yeah. Well, I think Dana, we went for a little bit over an hour. I'm sorry to keep you for longer, but
No,
I feel like we covered most of our bases. I'm sure there are many little tidbits, as we alluded to, that we didn't mention because that'd be impossible. That would take 10 hours.
mention it
Is
all.
there anything? Is there anything else that's floating in your mind before we wrap up here?
No, I guess I'll just close out with, kind of repeating what you said that like we're looking forward to next season, but we want some more lightness to it so that or a good balance of both, right?
Yeah, for
I
sure.
do like the realness of this almost documentary style season as opposed to a reality show style season, but at the same time, we need the levity. So,
For sure, for sure. I That's a good note to end on. Well, Dana, I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm so excited to have finally had you on the pod. When and where can people listen to the Bravo Investigator? Because as people heard today, you know what you're talking about. You know your shit. You have really good recall. And just do your plugs before we sign off.
sure. So you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at the Bravo Investigator, and you can download the Bravo Investigator podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I air episodes every Monday, Saturday, honestly, sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes even Sundays, but definitely every Monday and Saturday. And you can also check me out on Patreon.
Love it. Everyone go check that out and go follow her on Instagram because it truly that's that I learned I keep up with all the with a lot of the news via your account. So I
Thank
appreciate your
you.
service. I really do.
Thank you for your service. Well, thank you for having me on, Gibson. It really means a lot to
Of
me.
course, this is really fun and exactly what I think the people needed after this season. So thanks again for coming on and we'll chat soon.